Welcome to the People, Purpose, and Profits Business Coaching Podcast. My name is Brian Buck, and my wonderful co-host is...
And I'm Kat.
I always get the pointing wrong for those that are watching. We are excited today to serve our small to medium-sized businesses. If you have less than 500 employees, we are here to serve you to create systems and structures and cultures that's going to help you succeed now and help you scale. So when you grow, you're going to be able to rock and roll. My past experience has been working with large organizations where we're undoing bad culture, undoing poor processes and systems. We're going to help you get it set up right this first time so you can move on and succeed. So today we are going to be talking about KPIs, key performance indicators. You want to kick us off, Kat?
Sure. I was actually really excited when you started talking about this because I think especially in business, when we're transitioning from working for someone else, it's so important to look at the things that we're doing, to look at the things that we're thinking, and to see how they perform and whatever goals we set for ourselves, whether, is the financial aspect, our own habits, is, how are we performing at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, to hit those goals that we want, the reason why we started a business, right? So having those practices readily available and doing them is really, really crucial to success. And I'm very, excited to find out about how it works in, a business with several employees and, having a team, because I think that's really beneficial.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really wanted to share is I think it's really important for people to recognize, you're going to have to measure a lot in business, definitely your financials and performance of different things. But when we talk about what are your key performance indicators, these should be a select few of all that you measure. And the way that I like to coach people in determining what those should be is what is going to engage people. What is something that by making it abundantly clear, then everybody knows what they are working for and towards. And like I worked in healthcare once and I saw a group of daily management, and this was an organization that was owned by physicians. And in there, every day they would look at how well are they filling their clinics. So if they had 10 spots, did they fill all 10 spots, or were they like 80%, or what's their cancellation rate? And one of the things that was really important about why they used that metric is they used it to reinforce and teach what is important to everybody on the team. So they knew they needed to collaborate together to figure out how do we use every available slot to serve maximum customers, because that was ultimately tied to their profitability and their ability to grow. So that's the main one, is what are the key things you want everybody in your organization to be able to know where you're at? I always think about it like, are you winning? Are you losing? Where are you going? So those are really important.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I always suggest coaches do and solopreneurs do is that they evaluate. And not too many people do this. And I get it. Coaching is very self-driven. It's, something that comes from passion, wanting to see people do good. But at the end of the day, we still have a business. And that's the aspect that's probably the hardest when you transition from being an employee to being self-employed. And, when we look at the things that we want to bring with us, which is the certainty that we can help someone, I think that in itself can be definitely one of those KPI, and use it to track whether or not the way you're showing up when you're talking to a client, the way you're showing up when you're posting things, the way you're showing up when you are creating powerful partnerships or creating new relationships. Is that the way you're showing up? And that I think can be something very useful for anybody that's listening. Check your energy. And it's really interesting because a great friend of mine and colleague, we were doing something live about the where do you come from, like what's the energy you come from.
Mm,
And I think this really hurts a lot of solopreneurs, because when they're on a call trying to help someone, in the back of their mind, they have this fear of not being able to close a sale. And they
mm,
come from needing to close a sale. So that's why the energy where you come from is really important. And you can use that to measure whether or not you showed up in the best possible way for your client,
mm.
because that may be the very thing that they need help with. And you have to have yours checked first before you can help someone else do that.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to really make the idea, the understanding of what is kind of your personal KPIs versus maybe the business KPIs.
Mhm.
Because you had a good blend on how am I showing up. And you and I, before we started recording, read this great book called Positive Intelligence. And one of those things he talks about, a lot of research has said generally, different cases can apply, but generally, you need to have 3 positive thoughts to every 1 negative. And that's because our brains are so wired to look for the bad, look for the danger. It's biased towards the bad. So you have to over flood it to be able to get past that. Anyways, I think that would be something you might measure for yourself as a leader or as a solopreneur, similar to your energy. And energy is always contagious. People can pick up on your mood. Always, you set the pace as a leader and definitely as a coach. And yeah, so you want to think about what are you measuring for yourself versus others. I participated this week in a great webinar from a fellow coach. I haven't experienced it yet, but have you ever heard of the Nudge app for coaches?
Mm-mm.
So nudge is an ability that you could be able to set up measures of success for your clients. So I think he had people who do they exercise every day? How well were they with their water? Did they make their calls to close deals? And he's able to see that from a big picture. So when he has his coaching meetings, he could say, let's see your numbers. And he even had this great piece where he said, I can't, um, if you didn't enter this, we're just going to be talking about your feelings, not your results. And help people understand, well, what kept them from putting those in. But I think that is an interesting idea when you think about your effectiveness as a coach. Absolutely. When I coach, my client is going to care about their success more than I do, because they are the ones who do the work. So I'm just a guide. I'm there to help. I care for them and their success, but they have to own it. And so I think having those kind of things would be able to say, how can I be even better? How can I help people get insights? How can I help people take the action on it? How can I help people see that? And you need to have a measure from that. So how are you coaching your clients, and how can you then see it to be able to then see how it ties into your overall thing?
Yeah. And I think, one of the greatest things that I started using and has been a dramatic shift for me, and I hear it all the time with anyone that owns a business, is the lack of time. And the way we are allotting, or the way we're making it mean something.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe starting there and looking at your time and seeing how you actually spend your time
Right.
versus how you think you spend your time, because there is a big difference. Our brains wants to make us believe that we don't have the time, but we have the same amount of time with people who are leading, trillion-dollar industries. So
Right.
we need to stop making excuses, get things on paper, and see, black on white, what is really the actual truth.
For sure. And I also wanted to share another important distinction for KPIs and running your business. It's the difference between a leading measure and a lagging measure. Also, would be known as a process measure or an outcome measure. So a process or a leading measure, that would be measuring the activities, the things that we do. How well are we doing our things each time versus the outcome? How did it actually achieve what we wanted to? So going back to the sales thing, I don't know if you've heard of the money game. Different people use that, but it is you want to track how many conversations are you having with people.
Mm-hmm.
The outcome would be how much sales have you had. But in actuality, if you are increasing your number of conversations, your process or your leading measures, then your outcome measure will definitely go up as well. So often we just focus on the outcome. Okay, I want to get to this goal, but you never tied it into what are the activities it takes to get there. And then it is just a matter of hoping or wishing, but you also don't know which lever to move to change to be able to get that outcome. So you definitely want to make sure whatever your KPIs are, you're clear on, is this an outcome or a process measure or a leading measure? And maybe at the corporate level, the bigger one, you might be looking at the outcomes, but you want to cascade down with the different departments. What are the different process pieces that they can manage that's going to be able to help them get that outcome and respond to it? The conversation I had this week with someone was, how do we set up daily KPIs? And that is the number one thing, is it's got to be something that they can influence daily. Because if they can't change the system or adjust the system to increase sales, increase conversation, just going to become a number on a wall, and it's not going to be engaging, and people are going to quit looking at it eventually. But if it's something that they could say, hey, I've got an idea, let's try this out and let's see if it makes it better the next couple of days, and then you can make that maybe a permanent thing, then you are able to improve and get more predictable, reliable outcomes.
Yeah, which is probably why it's so important to have KPIs, because you are measuring on a daily basis and you're able to make the changes as you go versus getting to, the deadline and being,
Right.
wondering why it didn't happen, or what happened, where did the time go, where did the energy go, where you missed out, what you didn't do right. And as you were talking, I'm thinking a little bit more on the coaching side, something that it was talked about, and I find it super powerful, is, the difference between circumstances and a thought. Because the circumstance is the real hard fact, something that can't be changed, versus what we actually say about it. And it's things like, I posted on my Facebook 20 times and nobody, engaged with it, or nobody took me up on like talking to me about my services. But then if you get down to the math and you look at it and you say, okay, how many offers did I actually make? And then
Yeah.
see, okay, based on the offers that I made, I had this much engagement. But because the brain wants to kind of just like lump everything together and just say, well, it didn't work, or, just generalize everything, it makes us feel that we're doing far less, or that what we're doing isn't working. But when you realize that, it's proportionate, which is why they always say sales is a numbers game. Having those conversations and knowing how many you've had, and even tracking what you've said or what you've done within those conversations, maybe that can be your KPI, right?
Yep.
Tracking exactly how you proceeded with the conversation, maybe writing down some of the things that you've said and how you could have maybe said them different, and adjusting every single day so that you can improve and get to the point where your process so it's so seamless that people have a very clear understanding of what you're doing.
Well, I'll even just add, Sean Q, who we interviewed a while back, he has another awesome challenge going on this week that I'm participating. And he said again, when you're in sales, you should measure how often you're talking versus listening. And sometimes we're talking too much. And what we really need to be doing is hearing from them, and that's important. So I think those things are super important when we think about that sales process. And and when you look at your business, you might even have KPIs by different departments that roll up. So maybe marketing might be looking at how many uh, pieces are going out, and what's the engagement, what's the conversion rate, whereas maybe at the high level you're just looking at the sales and the average ticket price or a cart price, so that way you are getting more from each customer, or how many times customers are repurchasing. That's a favorite one that I always like, is how do you help you've spent all this money marketing to get people, and then you only sell them one thing. So what's the next thing in their journey, or what
Yeah.
can you do that supports what they purchased? Because it's not there to get more money, it's there to serve. It's like, okay, what do they need next? So there's lots of different things. As coaches, Kat and I would love to meet with each of you and figure out what is the right KPIs for you and your business as well. This is just a high level conversation. I don't want to say here's the 5 you should always use, but you definitely need to think through it. But having measures will greatly improve your finances, it'll engage your people, and it'll help you meet your purpose as well.
Beautiful. It's just so much shared. I think that, we're always going on different tangents, but as we've covered so much ground, and it's important to realize some of the things that makes the biggest difference in a business and can actually simplify the process. And getting clear about these can make the difference between, succeeding or, throwing in the towel.
For sure. Well, and I also wanted to touch base on kind of what you were saying when you make assumptions that one caused the other, is when you have measures, you're able to better say, or you're better able to tie that cause. You know what I mean? It reduces that
The
angsty
noise.
overhead that we
Mhm.
can have of, is it this, is it that, is it this? And the minute you ask yourself, is it something 3 times, it's going to be becoming overwhelming and you just want to peace out, versus, okay, well, we've thought about this, how well are we doing on these key things that lead to it? So,
Yep.
well, one thing that would be a great measure is to be able to see you subscribing to this podcast, either on our YouTube channel or on our any podcatcher of choice. We're on all of them, although I just found out one other one that I'm going to try to get us on. I can't remember what it is. It's kind of an obscure one, but by golly, if you're wanting to listen to us on it, we'll get there. And we also have a Facebook group that you can see each episode, and you can interact with Kat and I and other small to medium sized businesses, because you might easily learn from another person on key performance indicators that have helped them as well. So look for our Facebook group, People, Purpose, and Profits Business Coaching, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, everybody.
See you soon.